The Johnstown Flood is a terrible American tragedy where 2,209 people lost their lives, but it is also an American story of recovery in the midst of disaster. The city of Johnstown in 1889 had a population of 25,000 and focused on the production of steel. 14 miles above the city was South Fork Dam, one of the largest earthen dams in the world. It held back Lake Conemaugh, which was 2 miles long, a mile wide, 60 feet deep, and had 20 million tons of water in it. The dam was originally used as a source of water for the canal system, but that was quickly replaced with the railroad. Later changes to the dam included scrapping the drain pipes, lowering the height of the dam in order to allow 2 carriages to cross at the same time, and placing a wire netting in the spillway so that fish could not escape. The dam at the time was owned by the South Fork Hunting and Fishing Club, with prominent members such as Andrew Carnegie and Henry Clay Frick. On May 31st, 1889, heavy rain saw the water level rising a foot an hour, and despite efforts to add to the height of the dam and to dig a second spillway, the water began to leak over the top, and suddenly all at once the dam broke and raced toward Johnstown at 40 miles per hour. Here we see a picture of the dam today, and we can see where it did break. By the time the 40-foot wave, which was half a mile wide, hit Johnstown, it had picked up debris along the way, including houses and logs, and many described it not as a wall of water, but as if the mountain itself was falling down. They also described the noise as a thunderous rumble or the crashing sound like a locomotive. Houses were completely destroyed, and to make matters worse, the debris accumulated at a stone bridge, which burned for 3 days. Following the flood, journalists flocked to Johnstown in early June in order to record details by viewing the destruction and talking to survivors. Over 100 newspapers and magazines sent their writers and illustrators to record the devastating event. Initial estimates of those who died were pretty high due to the fact there were so many missing. It ranged from 5,000 to 10,000 people, and the estimates of the damages ranged from 25 million to 50 million. There were tragic stories such as Anna Fenn, who survived but lost her husband and her 7 children, and there was also entire families who were killed as well. But there was also stories of bravery and the will to survive. An unknown hero similar to Paul Revere rode down through the city on his horse shouting, "Run to the hills." Engineer John Hess raced his train backwards toward Johnstown, blowing his whistle, warning of the incoming floodwaters. 27-year-old Edward C. Willis saved 22 people by venturing into the floodwaters 7 times on a makeshift raft. Victor Heiser, warned of his father, climbed to the roof of his barn and somehow survived riding down the wave before he was able to jump onto a roof of another house. Michael Ronessen was walking down Main Street when he heard a rumbling noise. He was then struck by the tide of the water, carried downriver, and nearly drowned, but he eventually managed to hang on a piece of metal for 2 hours until he was rescued. And a small girl who survived remembered being thrown 15 to 20 feet out of the floodwaters by her rescuer and caught by those in a house just outside of those waters. At the Church of the Immaculate Conception, a miracle occurred where people discovered that a newly dedicated statue of the Virgin Mary not only escaped destruction, but was untouched by the floodwaters. The reporter for the Washington Post described, "The flowers, the wreaths, the lace, were undisturbed and unsoiled. Not a wrinkle was observable in its outlines. The marks in the walls showed that the surface of the water had risen to a height of 15 feet, while the statue had been saved from a contact with the liquid. Everyone that has seen the statue and its surroundings is firmly convinced the incident was a miraculous one, and to even the most skeptical, the affair savors of the supernatural." In addition to over 2,000 dead, there was $17 million in damages, which in today's money equates to $4.4 billion. Martial law was also declared in order to prevent crime, and all men in town were required to work cleaning up the mess, or they were actually kicked out of town. With 10,000 workers, though, they did manage to clean up most of the debris in a few months, and they started to rebuild. Relief efforts, including one immediately called for by President Harrison, were arranged as people sent money, clothing, food, and timber to build houses. Survivors in the meantime without houses lived in tents or prefabricated homes. It is also known as the first major event that the Red Cross helped with. In all, over $3 million was collected for the people of Johnstown from all over the U.S. and even 18 foreign countries. It is estimated that 17 million pounds of goods made their way to the city. Johnstown rebuilt and eventually recovered. There is debate as to whether severe weather or human carelessness led to the breaking of the dam. There were lawsuits filed against the South Fork Hunting and Fishing Club, but no single person was ever prosecuted. In conclusion, similar to 9/11, the Johnstown Flood shows students the resiliency of Americans who strive to recover after enormous tragedy while forever remembering the lives lost.